Television's most beloved fathers weren't always who they appeared to be. Behind the family dinners, the warm advice, and the picture-perfect smiles, some of Hollywood's most iconic TV dads were hiding truths that could have ended their careers overnight. They married, raised children on screen, and spent years enduring quiet whispers, blackmail threats, and pressure from the studios, all while keeping up appearances for the cameras. Today, we're uncovering 9 legendary TV patriarchs whose real lives were nothing like the sitcoms that made them famous. Some stayed silent to survive, others finally fought back. But first, where are you watching from and what time is it right now? Robert Reed brought Mike Brady to life, becoming the model American father for millions of viewers. Yet away from the cameras, he chafed against the show's cheerful, simplified tone. A classically trained stage actor, Reed frequently clashed with creator Sherwood Schwartz, objecting to scripts he felt trivialized his craft. He pushed for depth and subtlety, approaching sitcom scenes with the same seriousness he'd bring to the theater. What went unspoken on set was that Reed was gay and quietly involved with a male partner throughout the series' run. His early personal life remained largely private from the public. By the time The Brady Bunch was filming, he had found community within Los Angeles' gay scene spaces where he could set aside the performance of daily life. He grew skilled at keeping 2 separate worlds, the polished professional by day and his authentic self by night, always weighing who might notice. His castmates had suspicions, though nothing was said openly. Florence Henderson later admitted she'd known, describing him as a deeply conflicted man who channeled that inner tension into demanding perfection at work. His frustration with the show's lighter material wasn't just about artistic standards, it reflected the strain of projecting an ideal image while guarding his private truth. Reed passed away in 1992 from complications tied to colon cancer, with HIV noted as a contributing factor, a revelation that stunned fans who remembered him only as television's wholesome dad. Raymond Burr built a career on authority, first as defense attorney Perry Mason, then as the wheelchair-bound detective Robert Ironside. With his deep, measured voice, he became one of television's most trusted figures. Audiences expected steadiness from him, and Burr never failed to deliver it. What viewers didn't know was that Burr had invented tragic personal stories to explain his private life: a wife who died in a plane crash and a son lost to leukemia. Neither was true. Biographers later confirmed these tales were constructed, cover meant to explain why he never appeared with a woman publicly. In reality, Burr spent more than 3 decades with actor Robert Benavides. The two traveled together, ran a successful orchid business, and built a home life that studio publicists actively concealed, sometimes staging photographs to maintain the illusion. Taking on Ironside, a determined investigator navigating life with a disability, gave Burr an added layer of protection. He told his invented stories so consistently that they became accepted as fact, a narrative he leaned on in interview after interview. Benavides was no passing rumor, he was the constant Burr came home to after every production wrapped. Colleagues described Burr as generous yet fiercely guarded, someone who deflected personal questions with practiced ease. After his death in 1993, obituaries frequently reduced Benavides to a mere business partner, overlooking a bond that outlasted many celebrity marriages. Sebastian Cabot's commanding presence and rich British voice made him ideal for Mr. French, the proper butler raising 3 orphan children on Family Affair. Cabot lent theatrical gravity to what could have been a lightweight premise, elevating it with genuine dignity. He never married and offered almost nothing about his private life to the press. That reticence didn't quiet the speculation; if anything, it fed the gossip columns and studio chatter. Cabot responded with graceful evasion, letting his performances speak for him rather than addressing his personal affairs directly. When journalists pressed, he'd charm his way past the question, redirecting toward his craft or his passion for fine cooking. Among industry insiders, there was quiet speculation about male companions in his life, though nothing concrete ever surfaced. His substantial size, reportedly exceeding 300 pounds at times, doubled as another form of deflection. Cabot would joke that indulgent food was his one true weakness, a line that always got a laugh, which was exactly the point. Humor became a kind of camouflage, and courteous reserve kept people at arm's length. Splitting his time between London and Los Angeles, maintaining residences in both cities, only made it harder for rumors to stick. When he died unexpectedly of a stroke in 1977, most obituaries focused solely on his accomplished acting career, leaving the private man almost entirely undiscussed. Paul Lynde, biting campy unmistakably himself, became a beloved fixture on Hollywood squares. So when a network tried casting him as a straight-laced suburban dad on The Paul Lynde Show, the mismatch was obvious to everyone. His theatrical, innuendo-laced delivery worked wonders in a game show format, but felt jarring wrapped around a wholesome family sitcom. Audiences could feel the tension as though everyone was playing along with an unspoken rule. The show tried to costume him in normalcy, but his signature smirks and comic timing kept undercutting it. Viewers laughed, then grew unsure of what exactly they were laughing at. Among friends, Lynde lived far more openly famous for extravagant Beverly Hills parties filled with young men and free-flowing drinks. Beneath the humor sat real isolation and self-criticism worsened by an industry that mined his identity for jokes while forbidding him to name it plainly. Those who worked with him recalled a man who could be sharp and often intoxicated, resentful toward producers who profited from his persona while confining him to it. His humor kept people at a distance. He'd deliver the cutting line before anyone else could. A disturbing 1965 incident involving a young man's death at his home reportedly left Lynde shaken for years afterward, deepening his fear of scandal. He died alone of a heart attack in 1982, his talent forever entangled with the isolation of performing joy for others. Hugh Beaumont, as Ward Cleaver, personified calm, cardigan-wearing fatherly wisdom for suburban America. He had actually been ordained as a Methodist minister before pursuing acting, a background that made him seem an unlikely figure for any hidden complexity. Audiences trusted him because his authority felt gentle rather than harsh. Even so, biographers have noted gaps in his career history and personal choices that aren't fully explained. Before landing his defining role, Beaumont spent years appearing in modest film noir productions throughout the 1940s, often playing minor detectives or working-class characters far removed from Ward Cleaver's polished image. He married twice and raised 3 children, maintaining an outwardly conventional family life. Still, certain unexplained stretches in his biography leave room for speculation about what wasn't documented. Following Leave It to Beaver, Beaumont largely withdrew from acting, taking on occasional commercial work and directing assignments rather than pursuing major roles. He grew increasingly private in his later years, and few colleagues claimed real insight into his life beyond the character that made him famous. Some accounts suggest financial pressures shaped his choices during this period, though details remain sparse. He died in 1982 while traveling abroad, and much about his personal story remained unresolved. For a man so associated with clarity and steady guidance on screen, the record he left behind stays surprisingly incomplete. Robert Young as Jim Anderson on Father Knows Best embodied the ideal 1950s patriarch, calm, patient, and quietly authoritative in solving his family's problems. Industry awards only reinforced the illusion that he was the real embodiment of fatherhood. Week after week, he modeled restraint, playing a dad who never raised his voice unless the moment truly called for it. Behind that image, Young was privately battling serious depression and alcoholism struggles severe enough to require repeated hospital stays. Studio representatives worked to keep at least one suicide attempt out of public view, since any hint of instability risked damaging his carefully built image. The gap between the man selling domestic stability and the turmoil he couldn't discuss openly was significant, and maintaining that facade took a visible toll. Some biographers have suggested certain friendships with male colleagues may have run deeper than platonic, though this remains unconfirmed speculation rather than documented fact. What is well established is his reliance on alcohol and his ongoing need for psychiatric care, all quietly managed to preserve his wholesome public persona. Later in life, he lent that same trustworthy image to coffee commercials, selling a vision of domestic contentment he often couldn't find in his own home. Friends described him as warm and engaging one moment, then abruptly withdrawn the next, as though protecting himself from his own carefully constructed reputation. William Frawley had already secured his place in television history as Fred Mertz on I Love Lucy, turning gruff comic timing into an art form before taking on the role of Bub O'Casey on My Three Sons. Yet his personal life carried a heavier, more isolated quality than his on-screen persona suggested. Those who knew him described a man capable of genuine wit in brief bursts, followed by long stretches of difficulty, as though the humor never fully settled into contentment. On set, he might nail a scene in one take, then spend the rest of the day grumbling about everything else. A habit that made him few friends among crews and co-stars alike, and one that only hardened as the years went on. His marriage to vaudeville performer Edna Louise Brute began in 1914 when the two toured together as a comedy duo billed Frawley and Louise, performing on the Orpheum and Keith circuits and even appearing together in a few silent films. The union ended in divorce in 1927 after 13 years together, and he chose never to remarry. Known for heavy drinking and a quick temper, Frawley often pushed colleagues away, treating irritability as a kind of armor against getting close to anyone. Quiet rumors also surfaced over the years about relationships with younger men dating back to his vaudeville days, though none were ever substantiated, and Frawley himself never addressed them publicly. In his final years, Frawley lived largely alone, increasingly withdrawn from the industry that had made his face familiar in millions of American living rooms every week. In 1966, he collapsed on a Hollywood street from a heart attack and died shortly after a quiet, almost anonymous end that stood in sharp contrast to the lasting popularity of the characters he'd created. The whispers about his private life lingered for decades, but they remained just that speculation, never confirmed, only lasting suspicion attached to a man who spent his career making other people laugh. Dick Sargent took on a challenging role when he stepped in for Dick York as Darren Stevens on Bewitched. His wholesome on-screen persona as the devoted husband worked beautifully for audiences, but privately, Sargent lived under constant anxiety about rumors surfacing. He sealed off his personal life, completely fearing that a single misstep could unravel his career. So he kept smiling and stayed hidden, even inventing a fictional ex-wife for the press to maintain the illusion. Studio handlers pushed him to stay out of the public eye outside of work, and he complied, declining invitations, avoiding cameras monitoring his every move for years on end. Once Bewitched, wrapped in 1972 acting roles, grew scarcer, and his isolation deepened even as he continued picking up steady television work through the 70s and 80s. In 1991, nearing 61 and watching friends succumb to the AIDS crisis, Sargent finally went public, announcing he was gay in a speech marking National Coming Out Day. His fear had never been theoretical. It had governed his daily choices for decades, turning ordinary decisions into calculated risks year after year, role after role. The announcement caught many by surprise, not because it seemed unlikely, but because so few men of his generation ever spoke the truth so openly and on the record. Sargent spent his remaining years devoted to advocacy, appearing at rallies and fundraisers, including serving as co-grand marshal of the 1992 Los Angeles Gay Pride Parade as if reclaiming lost time. Elizabeth Montgomery, his former co-star, stood by him publicly and remained a loyal friend to the end. When Sargent died in 1994 of prostate cancer, activists remembered him as a man who ultimately chose honesty over the carefully written script Hollywood had handed him. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new videos. See you in the next one.